Hi, and welcome to VOW, Voices of Wisdom, the show that might not be for everybody, but everybody needs to watch this show. And I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Today we're going to have a very, very unique show. It's going to be a lot of poetry and a lot of sharing and a very, very serious topic. And right now we're going to actually start with a poem. So Ethel, would you please just do your poem for us?
Yes, I'm going to start with domestic violence. Domestic violence comes in such subtle ways, hiding behind the many roles that it plays. As love, it could be as good as peaches and cream and can sweep you away in a romantic dream. It really starts with a hit or a shove, just skillfully you're removed from the people you love. Removed, however, in body or mind, your connection with people gets harder to find. Little by little, you put at odds, making friends and kinships uneasy and hard. As time goes by, the gap grows wider. Within your family structure, you now feel an outsider. You see, that's the trick. Domestic violence starts in the mind, and you're fed thoughts and fears of many kinds. It's just an insecure ego needing to control and can beat you into submission to do what you're told. So look carefully behind the stars in his eyes. Many are laced with strategic lies. I may sound cynical and a little unfair, but just some of my memories could be your worst nightmare. Innocently in love, I just didn't see the predator behind the smile that was stalking me. Within each threat and behind every slap, my strength and my courage became entrapped. Though I walk around with my head in pride, my passion for life inside had died. Do you know what it's really like to live in fear? I mean, afraid to move from your very own chair, knowing that if you stood up, you'd just be knocked down and probably kicked while you're on the ground? I once witnessed someone I loved kicked in the head, and she was left in a coma until she was pronounced dead. No child should have to lay awake in the night and lay in silent fear as their parents fight. Imagine the horror of seeing your mother's blood and know that it's caused by someone she loves. Or try hiding in a closet, praying not to be found, knowing if you're discovered, you'll definitely get beat down. Would you mind if I told you a story, one of the many truths that I hide? Sometimes shame won't let me tell it, or maybe it was my pride. I was never thought to be a weakling and of sound mind. I didn't stand for much nonsense and of the kindest people you'll find. Now just imagine for a moment in the comfort of your sleep, suddenly a fist comes crashing through your front teeth. And imagine, too much to your surprise and horror, you're looking into your loved one's eyes. There are many untold horrors that hide in the night when alcohol is the fuel that ignites the fight. Don't be fooled. Liquor's not the only equation. A weak mind and a jealous heart is enough for persuasion. I looked down the barrel of a gun one night. No time to think, I just took flight. But it was too late. I wasn't that fast. I only fled a few feet when I heard the gun blast. But the worst thing about this, just in the next room, my two young girls lay there listening to their mother's doom. Oh my God, you shot me is all I could say. I was paralyzed with fear when the ambulance took me away. Over and over, the police and detectives questioned me, and I repeatedly said, the gunman was someone I didn't see. I believe if I told, there was nowhere I could hide. I knew we had our ups and downs, but I loved him, so I lied. So to this vicious cycle, I could see no end. Everything is just fine was my game of pretend. With all the pain and the hurt that had evolved inside, feeling I was trapped, I thought of suicide. For many years, I continued to live this way, but to save my own life, I had to run away. So I walk around ashamed, too ashamed to lift my eyes. Discouraged from living, my zest for life had died. But in this shell, wanting, hoping, wishing, and unable to give, frightened into withdrawal, something wanted to live. So I cry for the sensitivity there needs to be. I cry for the tears that I wouldn't let you see. I cry for the guilt for allowing the abuse. I cry for the feelings of what's the use. I cry for the young. I cry for the old. I cry for the many lies that I had to be told. I cried for the times that I just didn't know there was help for me and somewhere to go. No matter what the reason, domestic violence is here, and we all could share to help make victims aware. Thank you.
So that poem is not just a singy-song poem with rhymes. That's actually what happened to you.
No, this is actual truth. A lot of it is stuff that I lived through or that I've seen. And the part where I witnessed someone kicked in the head, that was, someone I loved dearly. I thought of her as a second mother. And I saw this, and she stayed in a coma for a week before she died.
Wow.
And it's life, it's reality, and I lived that fear of being afraid to move, being afraid to, just hiding, afraid to be beat up, and, it's a reality. It was my reality.
Wow. The poem is so specific about things that actually happened to you, and, people don't realize what you go through with domestic violence, but also share with me, go back a little bit, Ethel, on some of the things that happened to you as a child and how you felt as a child when you grew up and your atmosphere when you were growing up.
There was 12 of us. We had a big family, and we lived on a farm.
Where'd you
I grew up in Bellport.
In Bellport?
Yes.
Okay.
And we lived on a farm, and there was just a lot of us children. Mm-hmm. But then also, my mother, she worked a lot. My father worked all the time, and so there was a lot of times that either we were at home alone with just the older ones watching us or whatever. Mm-hmm. But there was, there was abuse. Mm-hmm. There was alcoholism. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of things that happened as a child that I didn't feel very good about myself. So I had very low self-esteem.
So who was the alcoholic in the family?
My mother.
It was your mom?
My mother, yeah.
Okay.
And she abused alcohol, and therefore she was our disciplinary,
Oh,
and
she was a disciplinary.
Yes,
under the influence.
Under the influence, yes.
Wow.
Yes, so they were very, very hard times, and you just learn to stay out of the way, and that's what I did with my writing. I stayed out of the way, and I wrote a lot of the hurt and the pain and the fear that I had. I put into my writing, and that was my self-healing for me. So,
So you wrote in the poem how you ended up being shot.
Yes.
And kicked in the teeth.
Yes.
And all those things occurred. And was that by a husband or a boyfriend?
No, it was by a boyfriend. I was only about 19, 20 years old, mm-hmm. And to get away from home, you see those stars, you see the stars in their eyes.
Exactly, exactly.
And, so I went on this fairy tale trip to get away from home. And
we hear about the story, looking for love in all the wrong places, right?
Exactly. And it ended up to really be an abusive situation. So, I ended up, there's a poem I wrote that I said I had to run away from home.
Right.
To even get back home.
Right.
Because I was in an abusive situation and afraid to get away, afraid to move, afraid to, be discovered, that I had to wait till, he was an alcoholic also, and wait for him to go to sleep. And I climbed out of the window with my 2 children. Wow. And caught a cab out of town in order to get away from that situation.
Wow, wow.
So it just gets really critical to the point where if you don't do what you have to do to get away, you can really get swallowed up in this, because it seems so lovely. Just like I said, peaches and cream, just from the outside, until you get in there. And it's like, so I just thank God.
Yeah.
I really thank God for, delivering me from the situations that I have really gotten in being naive, young, or whatever the case may have been. So.
And, I understand that your domestic violence led you into drug abuse.
Yes.
Which is, sometimes it's like compounded the whole situation.
Yes.
And, the other thing I want to say before you get into the talking about your drug abuse is, we understand, too, a lot of times domestic violence comes from an abuser finding someone that's weak.
Yeah.
So did you feel that had to do with you? You were in that situation as well, or not?
I didn't really think I was a weakling, but I was gullible.
Okay.
And it's like, tell me what I want to hear, and you believe that, you want to believe that.
Right.
And that's what that is. You really want to believe that, and you don't want to see, you actually stop really looking for excuses not to see, you know, and it's so, you really don't see that. But then when you really do come across a situation and you feel like, you know, okay, that was it just crashed your whole world, just fell apart. And you start looking for the other things, you know, something that's going to take you out of that. And there was a point that I had actually stopped writing.
Really?
Yes, I had stopped writing at a point because it was so much of me. And what happened after my high school years, I had lost one of my girlfriends, misplaced my book.
Oh, okay.
And it took so much away from me that I had actually was afraid to write again for fear of losing it. But then without having this healing for myself, I looked in other places.
Okay.
I started looking in other places.
Okay. Okay.
And therefore, you know, just like you said, looking for love in all the wrong places. You know, well, love wasn't it for me anymore.
Right.
Maybe it's got to be something else.
Right, right.
And therefore, you know, you get into things that you don't understand.
So then that's
that
where
was
you
one of-
you got into drugs.
And that's what happened to me, yeah.
What was your
and I
drug
really-
of choice?
Cocaine.
Cocaine.
And I really didn't understand, you know, what was going on with me once I was there, you know. So thank you, God, again, for another situation that He delivered me from.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a whole new world within itself, you know. I felt like I was on another planet. I didn't even understand street language or anything.
So you really didn't even understand street language,
No,
but you
not
got, so
yeah.
that was another challenge for
That
in
was
itself.
a whole different
Because generally
world.
when you're into drug scene, that's like, you got to know street.
And I didn't know street when it happened to me. I didn't know street.
Wow.
So therefore, I would cling to people that I thought would protect me, which wasn't a good idea either. So therefore, I lived a long life of struggling, trying to get to the point to where I am, and knowing that, you know, and I'm going to keep saying it, thank you, God, you know, because that's my deliverer, and that's who I've been able to cling to,
Right.
to stay away from, you know, to actually learn and raise myself, you know.
So what path did you take to finally get yourself not only out of the domestic violence, but out of the drug abuse as well?
Actually, when I did end up getting out of drug abuse, I went into a hospital, and I didn't even know that. I asked the doctor if he could give me pills to get rid of it.
How'd you end up in the hospital?
Because I tried to leave town. I tried to walk away from it.
Oh, okay.
I figured, well, you know, if I just walk far enough and get away and I don't have to go back, it wouldn't be wherever I go. And I ended up almost passing out on the highway.
Oh, wow. So
And
you
that's-
literally was walking.
I literally was walking, trying to walk away from it.
Wow.
I was literally I walked out of my hometown. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care where I was going. All I knew is that wherever I go, I would be away from what I was in. And I ended up almost passing out on the highway. And so I called my sister to come get me. And the only objective to her bringing me home was I had to go to the hospital first.
Okay.
And that's how I ended up in the hospital. And then my health was really in terrible shape. So then I let the doctors know that, you know, I had a drug addiction. I didn't know what to do about it. And I asked them, did they have pills, some kind of pills or whatever, to get rid of it. And that's how I found out about rehab.
So obviously, when you're on drugs, a lot of things happen. I mean, how did you get your drugs? What did you do? You didn't have a job?
No.
Or did you have a job?
No,
I mean, I shouldn't assume that.
No, I didn't have a job, but I clung to, like I said, you cling to people. There's a whole group a whole clique that you get into with other people, you know. And then you learn little tricks of the trade, like switching receipts back at the store and little things like that. Some things are not very so little, but, you know, for me, I was really too scared and didn't know where I was at and what was going to happen, so.
So that's
You know.
what you're saying too, and I'm just making a point of this, you know, just to even inform the audience, because that's basically what my show is about, information as well, and is really a whole another world.
Totally.
In that,
Totally.
where they're learning and teaching you how to do and how to finagle and how to get around
and how to
how to get over,
how to basically live that life. So, you know, when I found myself in total despair at one time, I was in a flooded basement, and I literally had to get on my knees and cry to God that, you know what, if you're really there, you know, bring me out of this situation. And, you know, however it led around to it, that led me to the strength to walk away. And from that, it led me to the hospital. From the hospital, it led me to rehab.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
and then in recovery, I started back writing again.
Okay.
And through that, self-healing came back to me, you know.
That's
So
awesome.
it's
And
a
it's an
journey.
awesome thing because I know so many people have gone through rehab and gone through rehab and gone through rehab.
Yes.
So it
Yes.
was only one time for you. And so the other point too is your writing is really your healing. Your
Yeah,
poetry
but then
is
I
your
also
healing.
connected myself to my church
Okay.
and connected myself to people that are going in the same direction that I needed to go
And
in.
that's important.
It's very important.
It's very important.
It's very important. And to know, to add God into your life and to know that He's your soul, soul provider. And
you
it's
know-
not easy. It's not just 1, 2, 3 easy like that. Not at all, But I just had to live it. Never mind living it day by day. You got to live it moment by moment.
Right.
And that's what I literally had to do.
Right. And the great thing you've shared with me now, you actually have, you share your poetry, you advocate by sharing your poetry and your story.
Yes.
And so tell me some of the places that you have shared and people that you're involved with. I think you mentioned her story.
Yes.
And you mentioned a few other places.
Yes, I was writing with her. I write with her story, and that's a women's workshop, and they write their memoirs. And I also, through my poetry and going into recovery, I was in a shelter with Madonna Heights, and through a special stipend from the Eastern Arts Council, I was able to put some of my poetry in Lighthouse Mission. I had some of my poetry in Seafield, shelters, and I like writing for domestic violence, drug addiction, homelessness, and I met a lady while I was in a shelter, and I would go with her as she would speak at different places, and I would write poetry for different issues and different things that was going on, and it was just there. I've been writing since I was 10 years old, and that's God. That was God's way of giving me my means of putting out.
Your poetry, Ethel, is so powerful. And as a poet myself, I know what it is to express yourself, and it's almost a matter of survival.
It is.
It's a matter of survival when you write what you write. I mean, because if you don't write, sometime you would do other things or end up in jail, incarcerated, or, dead.
True.
Who knows,
That's true.
So writing that poetry is such a healing component.
Yeah,
And
it's an
like I
outlet.
said, I can relate because I'm a poet as well, and that's what I usually do to, to release.
Yes.
You know?
And this is my outlet, my writing, my poetry. And it's a very healing outlet.
Just to get back just a moment, when you're going through domestic violence and drug abuse and dealing with all that process, it takes time for you to heal,
Yes.
to forgive yourself. And how did that? You said is through God and through your relationship with God is how you have learned how to forgive yourself, and you're giving back. Is that how you are able to?
Yes, and through the experience of learning what I've been through. I have been through therapy, and I have to learn to understand. Like I didn't really understand my mother as far as her alcoholism and her disciplinary. Being a disciplinary. Where very extreme tactics were used.
Like, for instance?
Beaten with rubber hoses, iron cords, or whatever the case that may have been.
Whatever she put her hand on.
That was exactly it. Whatever she laid her hands on. But I had to learn that she herself didn't know any better by being an alcoholic or whatever. I didn't know what she had been through. So I had to learn to forgive her.
And that's another powerful thing.
Yes. I had to forgive myself for not forgiving her, and I had to learn to forgive her in order for me to pass that and heal from it. I can write and write and write, but if I don't add, excuse me, if I don't add any forgiveness or anything to my writing, I can't just write and say it's just writing.
Exactly.
There's an action that goes along with my writing, and that forgiveness is a big, powerful piece of it.
And how many children do you have, Ethel?
I have 3 children.
You have 3 children.
Yes.
And how have your children, I guess they're excited about you being here and knowing that you're doing your poetry? Because I think you told me for a long time you wouldn't share your poetry.
No, I didn't.
Why?
Because it was just so much a part. For one thing, it was a part of me, and I really did not realize that this poetry and my writing was given to me to share. So therefore, I thought it was mine. But through the process of healing and learning, about God and my religion and everything, I learned that we go through experiences to help somebody else through. And so that's the same thing with my writing. It's all experiences and things that I have gone through that I've written about that I can just share. And, through what I've gone through and what other people have gone through, sometimes they might, just hearing what you've gone through might help them, so. And then it also helps me in a way where I probably might have gotten into bad relationships to where I can tell myself, I need to get out of this, I need to get out of this.
Right.
But then I would write. And then I read it back to myself over and over in order to have a new reality to look at.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful. So you, Lily, would write your poetry and then read your poetry to keep you in that place.
Yes.
That you need to stay in that place.
Where I needed to go, yes.
That's powerful. That's powerful. To share it is one thing, but to also use it as a tool to keep
that's what I do.
in the place that you are. That's just, that's just unique as well.
Thank you.
It's really unique. Like I said, I really, this is just, when I met you and you told me about the domestic violence, it's just very, it's been an interesting a journey for me in the last 2 months. You're the third person that I've met who have dealt with domestic violence. And I haven't shared my story, but I also dealt with domestic violence as well. And it was very, very dramatic for me as well. And I think this is a topic that is very open now, and we need to talk more about this.
Okay.
But I think the thing that's more important is people that have survived it. Because my last guest I had on, she was also dealt with domestic violence. She's right now ended up having had brain surgery. And she's dealing with recovering in therapy. Her left side is completely, she's in the process of getting healing from her left side. She's like kind of numb and not even able to use her hand. But the whole other thing as women, why we stay and why we allow, domestic violence, to be a product of domestic violence is also very important to share. I mean, even to the point now, I know even young girls in school.
Yes.
They don't understand that when, that little cute little thing that's happening, it's not cute.
No.
But a lot of it, they don't feel that they're even worth, that's like feel that they're worth.
I've dealt with domestic violence even before I was away from my family home. I mean, falling in love with the boy next door, so to speak, and, even still being at home and being abused by, your boyfriend, whether you're in school, whether you're outside playing, should be playing, but you're in this situation to where someone thinks, they need to control you.
Right. And that's the other thing. It's a control thing.
It's a control issue.
It's a control thing.
Yes.
We have almost less than 4 minutes left. And the topic of my show is China Doll. And you're probably wondering why I named the show China Doll. And we even talked about the strength and the fragileness of a China doll.
Yes.
And you have one more poem that I want you to read before we go on the air that's called China Doll.
Yes, and this is the one that I wrote for myself to get myself out of a situation. China Doll. China doll on a shelf, so used to being by yourself, always told you're a precious gem and life is worthless without him. China doll just waiting to see his promise of the world once he is free. He holds you tender like fragile glass. As he renews his promise, you won't always be last. As if it were painted, your smile stays fixed. But the turmoil of emotions are so deeply mixed. So much time just slips right by. Fearfully you fight to keep your hopes up high. Blindly, his letdowns you thoughtlessly excuse, denying the reality that you're just being used. China doll, you just will not admit you're wasting your life as you patiently sit. You're fixed in a dream that plays in your head, not seeing the truth through your eyes instead. You're just afraid to move from that shelf. You rationalize you're protecting yourself. You know he'll never leave his wife and sweep you away to a fairy tale life. All he gives you is lies and lust and tell you that it's love and trust. Open your eyes and see his intent. Your time is up when you're totally spent. If you keep denying what you truly know, you lose your self-respect the deeper you go. Learn to love yourself more than he. Give life a chance and live to be free. Precious is the gem you call your heart. Strength and courage are the makings of a new start. Fear of the unknown is what keeps you from change, and being alone might feel a little strange. But China doll, be good to yourself. Give life a chance and come down from that shelf.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Ethel Trent, the poet, the advocate, the survivor.
Thank you.
You know, I thank you for coming on the show, and I thank you for your openness. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that are dealing with domestic violence. And there's a place called The Retreat that's local, and there's other places. But I also say to you, if you are dealing with domestic violence, get out. Get help. So many women, they don't get help. They deal with the abuse, and they continue to deal with the abuse, and they continue to deal with the abuse, sometimes not even calling the authorities, you know, and this leads sometimes to actual death. And we also talked about how it affects the children, how it affects the family. But you deserve more than that. So I say to you, find help, get help, because you're worth it. Amen. Ethel, Amen. This has been great.
Thank you.
And continue to write poetry.
Yes, I will.
Continue to share poetry, because it's healing, not just for you, but for everybody.
Thank you.
And I know that you will continue to heal through your poetry.
Yes.
And then by that, you become stronger. And that's what needs, like you said, you reach out to help others.
Yes.
You know, and
yes.
that's really what it's all about. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we don't know why we go through what we go through. But a lot of times we go through
to help
somebody else.
Yes.
Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but it's all good.
It is.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
And you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
This has been VOW, Voices of Wisdom. Brenda, your host, and have a wonderful day.